Hello, welcome back to the channel. This is a channel where we give you reviews, playthroughs, unboxings, and we generally like to talk a load of bollocks. Tabletop gaming in general, and in this video we're going to be talking about a fucking beast of a game by Uwe Rosenbourgs. We're going to be talking about Caverna, and in this game you are a dwarf who is attempting to furnish your cave with the latest shit from Habitat. You'll be trying to rear animals yet again in the hope that you can get enough victory points that will allow you to win the game. So in this video we're going to be giving you a very brief overview of the rules. We're telling you what we do like, what we don't like. We'll come back and we'll tell you whether or not Caverna is still worth playing about 8 years after its first release. So remember, if you're new here, then please consider subscribing to this channel. Leave a comment in that section down below. See you after this. Bollocks. So, Caverna, how'd you play this game? So Caverna is a step up from another Uwe Rosenbourgs game that was #1 on that nasty little website for quite a long time. It's the sequel to Argricola, right? It uses quite a few of the same mechanisms, but then builds on it, but then adds shitloads of stuff to the mix, right? So every player is going to get a player board. On this player board, you'll see that there is a cave section, and then you've got a farming section. You're going to get 2 dwarf workers that are depicted by a couple of discs, and then you're going to get a bit of food dependent on how far you're sitting away from the start player, right? There are some boards that you're going to dump in the center of the table. You've got the board with the action spaces. You're going to have a certain amount of cards that are pre-printed on the board, and then you'll be using cards to reveal a different action in each round. You've also got another board which has got loads and loads of rooms on it. These are one-shot things, so if you snooze, you're going to lose. So this game lasts for a certain number of rounds. The first thing that you are going to do is you're going to add a new action space, right? This might mean that you're going to be revealing a new action from cards that you put out during setup, yeah? Next thing you're going to do is you're going to replenish any spaces that are telling you to accumulate. This is denoted by an arrow pointing to one of them spaces. So if the arrow is telling you to dump a pumpkin on a space, then you dump a pumpkin on a space. So the third thing you're going to do is you're going to be putting your workers out on the board to take actions. All the spaces are first come, first serve. So if somebody else goes there, that means you're going to have to cry into your pillow, isn't it? So once you are done putting out all of your workers, then they will return home. And depending on what round it is, you may or may not have a harvest, right? So if there is a harvest, there'll be a field phase. This is where you'll grow your crops. Then there'll be a feeding phase. You'll have to have 2 food for every dwarf you got, and 1 food if you've got a baby dwarf, because you had a little bit of nookie with that sheep in a cuddle room. Oh, man. Then you'll have the breeding phase. This is where all the animals at a bunk up will give birth to little animals, right? So some of these spaces that you can go to on the board allow you to put fields onto your farming area. You might be able to carve a tunnel in your cave, right? Most of these options require you to give up a certain number of resources. You'll be wanting to take stone off of the take stone action and take ore off of the take ore card, right? You know what I mean? You might want to plant some vegetables in preparation for the harvest, right? You might want to get hold of some sheep. No, not to take into the cuddle room unless you are Welsh, right? You get points at the end of the game for a variety of animals, right? So it's in your interest to get a cow, a sheep, and as many animals as you possibly can. You might want to furnish a cavern, right? This is where you'll be taking those tiles off of the central board. There's different types of furnishings that you can get. You might want to get a stubble room. This is going to cost you 1 wood and 1 ore, and it allows you to keep a farm animal on an empty field, right? There's a concept in this game called animal husbandry. Basically, it's just a fancy way of saying there's restrictions on where you can and cannot place your animals. You might want to get the ruby supplier. This is going to cost you 2 wood and 2 stone, and at the beginning of the next 4 rounds you'll get +1 ruby. Rubies act as wild cards. They allow you to trade them in to take different resources, right? There's a whole host of things you could do, and rubies are really, really useful. Or you might want to get the writing chamber, and this will cost you 2 stone, and it prevents up to 7 negative points. So this gives you a bit of a leeway. Maybe you might want to starve your dwarf family to death, right? So there are action spaces that allow you to have a baby. This usually comes out in its first iteration in round 4. There is also a way of getting a 6th dwarf, but again, you will have to feed those hungry bastard children every round. There's going to be a harvest. Another Another thing you can do in Caverna is you could go on quests to bring back resources. One of the restrictions of this is that you will have to have a weapon for a dwarf to defend themselves with, right? When you get a weapon, you'll take the weapon token of that strength and dump it on your dwarf. You'll be able to upgrade this weapon mainly by going on missions. You're going to be getting experience that is going to make your dwarf hard as fuck, right? But when you go out on missions, the level of the mission you're going to get and the strength of the weapon you're going to get, they're going to determine what type of stuff you can get. You might be able to get yourself a new tunnel. You might be able to get yourself a cow. Or you might be able to do a host of other things that you can't do because some greedy shit has nicked that spot on the board. So you're going to keep doing this for however many rounds there is. I think there's like 14 rounds or something stupid like that. And then when you get to the end of the game, you do a little bit of final scoring. You'll get 1 gold per farm, animal and dog. You'll get -2. I'm not going to go through it all, but yeah, you do a bit of final scoring, don't you, right? And then the player with the most points will be the winner of Caverna. So what do we like about Caverna? So the first thing that we really like about this game is the variety of rooms available. It's what Peter Andre would call insania. There's just so many different options to go through. It's sort of mind-boggling when you first start playing this game. I mean, a few weeks back, I played this with some new players and they looked at the amount of rooms that are available and one of them literally shit themselves. Not metaphorically, a little bit of shit came out. And it's always possible to chain different rooms together. You might want to get a room that gives you different resources. You might want to get a room that allows you to use those resources to get more food. There's rooms that accommodate more dwarves. There's rooms that accommodate more animals. There's just a mind-numbing amount of options in this game, right? It's just quite satisfying knowing that no matter what happens in the game, there's always going to be something tasty to scoff. So the second thing that we really like about this game is the focus not on one area like you had in Agricola. You're going to be focusing on your farmstead, but there's 3 different places to focus on. You're thinking, hang on a minute, you got your cave and then you got your field. But I'm thinking you can also build ruby mines on top of your tunnels. So not only are you going to be focusing on this and that, you're going to be trying to build up as well. So in a sense, this game is 3-dimensional. So the next thing that we really like about this is that it plays up to 7 players. Yeah, 7 players. Fuck me! Mr. Rosenbourg has made sure that this scales really well. Don't get me wrong, I haven't played this with 7 players and to be honest with you, I really don't ever want to because it's long enough as it is with 3, 4 and 5. If you are a fan of the Marquis de Sade, then you might want to subject yourself to a 7-player experience. And Mr. Rosenbourg has actually included different boards that you can put together to scale the amount of options that are available, right? So it's one of the very few 7-player games, aside from 7 Wonders, that actually works. So the final thing we like about Caverna is that there's always something to do. The fact that you've got rubies and you've got the missions that you can go on, that means that even though there might not be any spaces directly onto the board that you could go to, you've got 3 different pathways to victory. There's always the wild card of the rubies. There's always the option of getting those really, really good rewards from going out on quests, right? So while the options on the board may seem quite limited, especially at the beginning of the game, because there's not going to be that many places to go, but as the game opens up, you're going to be spoiled for choice. That's sumptuous. So what don't we like about Caverna? So the first thing that we don't like about it sort of cancels out what we said earlier about there being loads of choice. And as you may know by now, I don't give a flying fuck about being labelled a hypocrite, right? That is, it's impossible to see all the different permutations of those room tiles with the actions without playing it like 100 billion times, right? Really, you need to chuck yourself on a desert island with 7 players and then just play Caverna until you either die or thirst or Tom Hanks appears with a volleyball stuck on his dick. So whilst we do embrace the opportunity of so many choices, it's also detrimental to the game because you never really know whether or not you're taking the most efficient and rewarding option, right? So second thing we don't like about Caverna is that this is essentially just sort of an individual multiplayer experience. The only interaction you're going to really get with anybody is by blocking that space, and this is one of the things we keep banging on about with regards to these sort of now traditional worker placement games, is that you're just going to be playing your own game. You're going to be building your own cave, your own farmstead, and it doesn't really matter any of those other muppets around the table are going to be doing, right? And for me, I don't really mind that, but I've played this game with a few people that got bored out of their nut because they're not given the opportunity to punch their neighbour in the nuts. So the Third thing that we don't like about Caverna is that we've played it all before, haven't we? This is basically just a step up from Agricola, and it uses a lot of the mechanisms and ideas from that game. They have tagged on these missions, and it doesn't really feel like you're actually going on a mission. You're going to be getting a token, dumping it on there, and then getting a reward without really doing anything. So is it that much different from Agricola? Not really, but it's just sort of like Agricola with a massive erection pumped full of steroids. So the final thing that we don't like about this, and this is to be expected with a game of this girth, it's the setup and teardown is an absolute nightmare. In fact, this is one of the worst games that we've had for setup and teardown. I don't even bother tearing this game down after I played it. I leave it on the table and I'll come back to it the next day once I have calmed down, right? Because the game's quite long in itself, don't expect to have any energy left after this to even think about putting it away. So to summarise, is Caverna worth your time or bother today and in the future? I suppose it all depends on how much you like Agricola. If you like Agricola, you're going to like Caverna, aren't you? If you didn't like Agricola for whatever reason, if you didn't like it because it maybe was a bit basic, not that it's basic, if you didn't like it because there wasn't enough content in it, then this may well tickle your fancy. It takes the same elements of stuff that we have seen before and it elevates it to the next level. There's so many options and choices that more often than not, it does feel like you're just partaking in a perpetual experiment to see what stuff fits together, right? But like we said, if you liked Agricola and you're looking for a game adds more stuff to that without adding too much complexity, then Caverna may well be the game for you. So there you go, that is Caverna. Remember, if you're new here, then please consider subscribing to this channel. Leave a comment in that section down below, hit the like button and all that YouTube bullshit. And we'll see you next time.